Hey, gang, this week's episode is brought to you by Old Fort Baseball Company. Hey, if you know, you know. Fort Wayne, Indiana, a cradle of forgotten sports memories. Check them out at oldfortbaseballco.com and use the promo code GOODSEATS for 15% off. You have memories of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League? How about indoor soccer? Maybe even pro softball. Can you believe it? And the Continental Basketball Association. All those memories and more. Great shirts, great caps, great everything at oldfortbaseballco.com. Promo code GOODSEATS for 15% off. And now, here's our show.
You are looking live at sold-out Tampa Stadium in Tampa, Florida, where a very interesting thing went on just a few seconds ago. They are oiling the goalposts because if the amazing Buccaneers win today, they're in the playoffs. And who knows, they may need those goalposts. They don't want them torn down. All the Bucs need is a victory over the Minnesota Vikings. And now, live from sold-out Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, where it has started to rain, the New Orleans Saints must win to hold on to a share of the NFC West, but the Falcons have beaten them 4 straight times. And live from Riverfront Stadium in Cincinnati, where the Bengals will be shooting for their third 79 victory, but they'll have to stop a St. Louis Cardinal team featuring the great running skills of rookie O.J. Anderson. And live from sold-out Giants Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey, where the Giants would love to play the spoiler role against the Washington Redskins, co-leaders of the NFC East.
Hello, everybody. We are in the home stretch, and those amazing Tampa Bay Buccaneers are just a victory away from the playoffs. And we'll tell you about a star who does a lot more than play football. All that and more coming up on the NFL Today.
Set, red 83!
Welcome to Good Seats Still Available, a curious little podcast devoted to exploring what used to be in professional sports. Here's your host, Tim Hanlon.
Well, I told you if you liked last week's episode, you'd enjoy this one. How are you, everybody? My name is Tim Hanlon, and it is indeed Good Seats Still Available. It is the curious little podcast that is devoted to what used to be in professional sports. I thank you for finding us, and we are absolutely ecstatic to have the one, the only Jayne Kennedy on the show this week. And of course, that setup just gives you all the goosebumps, as it should, from back in the day. The NFL Today, which was arguably the best way to get prepared for the Sunday afternoon and early evening adventures that the National Football League was to provide to the average American viewer. And in 1978 and 1979 seasons, the aforementioned Jayne Kennedy was an integral part of that NFL Today lineup, an Emmy Award-winning lineup at that. And of course, that's our hook for this conversation this week. But we're going to get into a whole bunch of other stuff too, because Jayne's life was more perhaps than those 2 years. But I think probably those 2 years were probably the biggest, most impressionable of her career, especially in the minds of the greater populace of the United States. So these sports fans, as well as admirers of her glamour and her artistic talent. But those are probably, I wouldn't call them necessarily the pinnacle of her career, but certainly probably her widest aperture of stardom and fandom. I don't know any warm-blooded American male who didn't find Jayne Kennedy attractive and then some, shall we say. And even though it was a brief period of time, I think it's probably the thing that most off the street folks, when questioned, would remember Jayne Kennedy from. But of course, as we're going to get into in our conversation, a long and quite varied. She's maybe the original hyphenate in terms of career, and still going very strong today. Thank you. And the excuse, though, I cannot lie, is a very candid memoir that I just was floored by. And yes, all the meaty details of the before, during, and after the NFL Today experience is included in that, and well worth it by itself. But the entirety of her career is fascinating and surprising, especially for those not having paid attention. The book is called Plain Jane, a memoir. It is out now, and it is an unbelievable read. I highly encourage you to find it. It is published by Andscape Books, and courtesy of Andscape, we will have a little trivia question for you near the end of the show, and you'll have a chance to win a copy of this book. And I tell you, even if you just buy it or win it to get the NFL Today stories, that is worth the price of admission. But I can tell you, you will get far more from it, and you will see and hear a little bit of a taste of that in our conversation coming up with the one, the only Jayne Kennedy coming up right now. So let's get right to it. Fascinating story. So many twists and turns. We only got to a portion of it, but sit back and I promise you, you will enjoy, as I did, this conversation with the one, the only Jayne Kennedy. Please, as always, enjoy. It's just really interesting to me how I think a lot of people remember you, right, from the day, especially those sports fans who didn't understand your career prior to, or frankly afterwards,
Right.
Who knew you from the NFL Today, those ridiculously crazy and amazing 2 years. And you have to be a bit heartened that all these people are coming out of the woodwork to remember you and embrace your story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's wonderful and it's beautiful because it's it's a career that started even before I left high school, because I was modeling starting in 10th grade. But to see, all the evolutions and iterations of myself as I developed, because I was the one that, that people would say, no, you can't do this because you'll be typecast. You can't, if you want to be an actress, you can't be a dancer, and I just ignored all of that, because it was in every single category. And so then when the opportunity to do the NFL Today, I said, this is crazy. Why am I? It's something I would love. Why would I not want to do this just because I'm an actress? So, there were a lot of hurdles. Indeed, there were a lot of hurdles. It was not easy, but it was definitely on my radar and I was going to make it happen.
Well, I definitely want to double click on the NFL Today stuff, which I know is only a small but exclamation point driven component of your story. But to me, which is a revelation, is the stuff prior to you getting into that role. Because I think, like a lot of sports fans, especially those who were not sort of hip to your acting career prior to that, it was an amazing sort of lead up and the story to that. But maybe just a quick few minutes on the Jane Harrison part of your story, right? You grew up in suburban Cleveland.
Yes, I did.
And you were,
I was Miss Ohio.
Yeah.
But that wasn't that, people like to think of that as my claim to fame, but it wasn't. There were so many things that happened, like I was also the senator from the state of Ohio, to represent Ohio at the Girls Nation program. I don't know if you're familiar with Girls Nation and Boys Nation, but it's a government-run program. So, you go and you run your government just as you would any city or county or state, and then you create a, a run for the Senate. And so I ended up being selected to be the senator from Ohio. I went to Washington, D.C., where I ended up becoming vice president of the United States. And to me, that was huge because as a younger child, I had been animated with, uh, oh my gosh, what's her name? She ran, first Black woman to run for president.
Shirley Chisholm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Shirley Chisholm. Yes, yes, I was enamored with her. I had been a fashion model and I was doing a show and I was backstage. I heard her voice. And so I peeked out the windows and I said, "This is crazy. I have to go see her." So I went over to the curtains, pulled the curtains back, and they were yelling at me, "Jayne, you're on stage. You got to get on stage." I couldn't leave. I was just glued to her. And I said, "I'm going to be a politician." But then I had to find a way to pay for that. So going to college, was going to be something that I really wanted to do. But the Miss USA pageant, I thought was going to be my way that I could pay for it.
Yeah, you talked
Um,
about that in the book, and it was quite disappointing that there was
quite
no sort of
disappointing.
cash per se or scholarship money or that kind of stuff.
Nothing at all. Not for me. So, then I ended up with that incredible experience in Washington, D.C. with Girls Nation. And to me, that was the highlight of my career while I was in high school. Because I actually started modeling. I was a paper boy for the local newspaper. That was my very first job. But
Yeah, that I think that there
I
was yeah back in the late 60s, early 70s. That was a thing. I mean, a Grit magazine was I know that was as well, but newspapers and that kind of stuff. But you I get the feeling from reading that you really sort of had eyes for college, but the money thing was certainly an issue, and the modeling thing was a way to kind of make, if you will, make ends meet. But did you ever envision that being really kind of your career, or was that kind of just to tide you over to maybe figure out how to pay for college and stuff?
It was just going to help me pay for college, and then Miss Ohio was going to help me pay for college because I really wanted to be a senator. And but then I got, my eyes opened, and drama had always been in my blood because I started acting when I was in seventh grade, but there were hardly ever any roles for a Black woman in a predominantly white, excuse me, predominantly white town. So here I was, trying to get on stage. And in the meantime, I'm learning how to be a director, how to do hair, how to do makeup, how to do everything that you do backstage. And so I was the only thespian that had not been on stage because there were just never any roles for me. And I became a thespian, and I said, "This is a great career for me." But I didn't know how I was going to make that happen. I had told everybody when I was one that I was going to be an actress, and 2 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to be an actress. So here I am, trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my next step, and all of a sudden, I get booked on a show called Out of Sight with Leon and Mike.
Okay,
And
this is a crucial point, Jane. So don't breeze by
yes,
this. Okay, we're talking
okay,
WUAB TV in Cleveland, and this was what kind of like I don't know what, a Soul Train kind of or American Bandstand ish kind of local thing
yeah.
on the air.
Yes, it was. It definitely was. And it had only been on air for 2 years. So they were very new. Everything was very new in my entire career, So this was a very new thing, especially for the city of Cleveland. And so here I am, doing these little bits on out of sight with Leon and Mike. And then Leon started saying, "Hey, you've got a real life for this." And I started getting into um, directing, into development, into production with the projects and the planning of the development of the sets, etc. So I just wanted to make sure that I was enjoying myself while I was doing this. And he was appreciating that. It wasn't just that he had hired Miss Ohio, but he was hiring somebody who was really invested in drama. And so when we eventually got engaged and got married, and we had rented an apartment in Cleveland, and he said, if we get in this apartment, it's going to be years before we actually leave to Los Angeles. And I said, we need to leave now. And I talked to my mom, and she said, there's something great for you to do, Jane, and it's not here. You need to go. And that was all the blessing that I needed. I talked to my father. He agreed with my mom. And the very next week, we were in a car driving cross country to Los Angeles. That lights of Hollywood had turned me away from capital city, Washington, D.C.
All right. So give me a couple of seconds here on the guy that's Leon Isaac Kennedy, still with us. But it's an interesting relationship because, well, first of all, he was a DJ, right? So, and this was sort of his TV gig
Yes.
kind of thing. And you kind
He
of
was a
describe,
DJ since he was 14 years old.
right. Okay. Which is also not
Yes.
uncommon back in the day. And also, my day job is in the media space, so a hustle type culture, so to speak, right? In some respects, right?
Yes.
Where so entrepreneurialism is kind of the nicer word of saying it. It almost feels to me like, based on what you wrote and you described, that you kind of are a budding entrepreneur in and of yourself. I wonder if you recognize that, or if that was you and Leon recognizing that in you, and then you both make the move together. Like, did you recognize that you were, I mean, you were on the cover of Jet magazine around that time. I mean, you were already starting to kind of
Mhm.
put some pieces together, so to speak, in terms of gigs,
Mhm.
right?
Right. Blossom. And the public was becoming aware of who I was. And, I was loving it. So, yes, it was definitely something that I thought, we can do this together. Um, and that was our plan when we arrived in Los Angeles. We created a 10-year plan, and that plan involved what the both of us would do to achieve our goal. And part of that plan was that we were going to make sure that we were seen and that we met everyone that we possibly could meet. Hollywood was not that large back then, and so we spent a lot of time meeting people wherever we could. Most of the jobs I got never came from auditions. It was through contacts, meeting people. And so then we said, we're going to become producers. We're going to, go all the way up the chart until we were able to maybe one day own our own studio, which was our goal.
So you guys had ambition with a capital A. What
Yes.
can you tell me how each of you and or both of you felt that you were going to manifest this this pursuit of career? Was it always going to be acting? Were there particular types of acting, or were there other kinds of roles, or folks areas of entertainment? And uniquely between you and Leon, um, it sounds to me like you were kind of really pursuing this simultaneously, but in parallel, not together. I mean, in
It
terms of
was
like being on the stage at the
simultaneous.
same time and same properties, that kind of stuff.
I understand. It was simultaneously more so than ever, more so than any other component. But there were times when we did work together. We did a movie in the Philippines together, Fighting Mad, and we did Big Time together, which was produced by Smokey Robinson. And then we ended up doing Body and Soul together. But we were at separate paths, for a lot of the time. When I first got my very first job in Los Angeles was on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. And I had just gone to the set to meet the choreographer. And next thing I know, the producers grabbed me by the hand and pushed me on set. And he said, just dance. So we'll get you in the lights, So he said, when the red light comes on, you stop, and just freeze. And he said, afterwards, he came back. He said, can you come back next year? So I quit my secretary job and I just decided that I was going to do this full time. And I went on to do the Bob Hope Bases Around the World USO tour again on a whim. I had gone to the audition, they had turned me down. And so Smokey was in town, and Smokey was a good friend of Leon's from when Leon lived in Detroit. And so we were going to have him over for dinner. So I picked him up at the airport. We get to NBC Studios, and Leon and Smokey are backstage. I'm in the audience seats. There's no audience. I'm just sitting there. And Bob Hope came over to me and he said, "Would you like to go with me on Dean Mart on my Bob Hope Bases Around the World Christmas tour?" And I was such a naive idiot. I said, I've already auditioned that and they turned me down. He said, he laughed. He said, well, let me say it a different way. I want you to go on my Pop Hope Bases Around the World Christmas tour. And I said, yes, I can.
Well, I got to tell you, my
So
goodness. Well, I mean, that's okay. So so is that because you're in the right place at the right time, and you're really you're putting yourself out there and into these situations, or I mean, how do you describe? Because you were all over television. I mean, I look at your credits during the bulk of the 1970s. I mean, you were guesting in like big time shows like Sanford and Son and the Rockford Files and the $6 Million Man, Policewoman, and I
oh
mean, you
yeah,
were all over the
oh yeah.
place. No
I
disrespect.
I did as much as I possibly could to work. I and people kept saying you have to want to be an actress, you have to remain an actress. Well, I was a singer, dancer, and actress. I did commercials. You're not supposed to do commercials back in that decade because commercials was a taboo. Now you see major stars doing commercials all the time. Back then, that was not the thing to do. So I just broke the barrier on everything. And then when they came time for the NFL Today came around, and I heard that they were looking for someone to replace Phyllis George, and I said I would love to do that job. I knew a lot of the athletes, and I had worked with the Cleveland Browns when I was Miss Ohio, and I knew Jim Brown, and so here we are at a place in time where we find ourselves trying to figure out how we're going to get this interview with CBS. And my agent, I see him, a huge international agent, and they refused to submit me. And I said, I know I can do this job.
Why? Why do they refuse to send you?
They said because they're not looking. And CBS was calling it the greatest talent search since Scarlett O'Hara. But he was saying they're not looking for someone like you. I knew what he meant. They were not looking for a black woman. And when they turned me, they got turned down the first time. Their list of 10 got turned down another time, and then the third time it was turned down again. And then Leon and I said, "Well, we need to call Jim Brown." So Jim Brown said, "Well, I'm going to introduce you to Bob Stenner. He's a field producer for CBS Sports." And Bob Stenner introduced me to George Wallach, who was managing Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so he set up a meeting for me to meet with the head of talent for CBS. She came to Los Angeles. She said, I think you'd be perfect. And so she took me back to New York. And I walked into the audition, and my agent was right. There were 16 girls, there were 15 blondes, and me. 15, they were all blonde, all blonde. Out of a greatest talent search to Scarlett O'Hara, that's what they came up with.
What was it about this particular gig that made you so focused and zealous for it versus other things out there?
Well, I was trying to build my career, and like you're looking for opportunities that can do that for you, the easiest way possible. And we knew that being on the NFL Today would give me national exposure. That would be, like you don't have to keep doing the $6 Million Man episodic TV, um, doing shows where you're doing um,
Typecast.
and you're typecast, and they never wanted me because I was always too tall. They wanted me on Charlie's Angels, but they said I can't find anybody tall enough to be your partner if you have a boyfriend, and the girls look too small next to you. So I always had that working against me. And but here I am in a position where I knew sports, I knew people in sports, and I knew that this would be the product that would propel me into the limelight that I had been looking for. And I'm not saying limelight because I just was craving limelight. I've never been that person. I'm just talking about purely as a businesswoman. This is what I needed to be able to reach that 10-year plan that we had set up. And I was right because it did. When I landed the job on the NFL Today, all of a sudden tens and thousands of people are now knowing who Jayne Kennedy is. But the interesting thing is uh, I would then go to an acting audition, and they would say, "Can you act? Have you ever done acting before? You're a broadcaster."
See, that's the thing. I honestly, and I got to think as you do interviews for promoting this book and stuff, that you may be discovering this, and that there are certain. I mean, eh, sports fans, especially males of a certain age, right, who remember, growing up watching or having those impressionable, NFL coverages from CBS and NBC at the time and stuff, and the NFL Today was just part of their daily or their weekly ritual. Um, there are probably plenty of people who just didn't know who you were, and all of a sudden, this, shall we say, goddess, and I mean this only in the nicest terms, shows up on this show, and like, wow, where does she come from, right? And frankly, I have to think too, as you go through these interviews and stuff, that um, many people kind of just think of you as only that, and obviously your story is much more than that. But I mean, I think mission accomplished in terms of breaking through, so to speak. But I think it also is it's a testament to just how powerful a show that was and a platform that was, that you not only would want it but would get it.
Yes. Um, it's been called the greatest sports pregame show ever. And to be part of that is truly a blessing. Truly a blessing.
But
As a
you
matter of
also
fact,
go ahead.
when they did a couple of years ago, they did "You're Looking Live," Rich's book, as a sorry, as a lead-in to the Super Bowl. I'm sorry, my throat is.
No, that's okay. That was it was great, and you were very good in it too. I thought your placement was
Thank
well done.
Thank you. Thank you. I was afraid that they were not going to allow me to tell my story because when they fired me, they wanted people to believe that they were right, that they had the right to do whatever they did in terms of getting rid of me. But, I fought tooth and nail, but, they get all the media exposure and I didn't. So, this was an opportunity. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'm thinking they're going to edit it out. And when the broadcast came on, they left it in. I was shocked.
Now, I'm really glad they didn't do that, because that's not the full story without it, right?
Yeah, and then you hear Thomas Henderson um, at the very end, and Brent had left, and everybody's getting ready to leave, and the crew brought over a little tablet to me, and they said, "Have you ever seen this before?" And it was an image of the NFL Today after they had fired me. So there may be week 4 of the following season, and they were interviewing Thomas Henderson. And as soon as he finished the interview, he turned to Brent and he said, "We miss our queen. Where is our queen? Where's Jayne Kennedy? We miss our queen." And that was the clip that they showed me that day. And
Can you enlighten me a little bit about the relationship that you had with Brent, because it was quite unique. I mean, the fact that I'd love to hear a little bit of the story that about what we think he said about your audition. But I also didn't realize until reading this book that you guys were plane mates for traveling across
yeah,
country each week. Can you
yes.
describe that a little bit too? Because I think that also maybe helped the bond a little bit.
Yeah. Because he said it's Jane or nobody at the audition. He says Jane or nobody. But they had to get the Southern affiliates to sign off on it. And the way that I got it was the interview with Muhammad Ali.
Yeah,
They
you were
had
you were on a short contract, right? And then so tell us about that
I
little
was
story, because there was, yeah,
I
I
was
mean,
on
that's just seems
contract
crazy
for
that you were on trial, so to speak, still.
yeah, after all of that for the audition and everything, they only gave me a 6-week contract. So I'm saying, oh my God, I have to prove myself all over again. I thought I had the job. And even Rich Podolsky said, they took her out to dinner in New York and she had this satin top on with the satin pants. They took her to Studio 54 and Jane had a great time and she thought she had the job and everybody loved her. We walked into a restaurant and men were just, like looking and their mouth dropped. And he said, we knew we had a winner. And, here you go. Then they tell me it's only for 6 weeks. So I'm 2 weeks in and I overhear the people at Sports Spectacular. I don't work for Sports Spectacular. I work for the NFL Today. but I overhear them arguing they can't get the post-fight interview with Muhammad Ali. And Muhammad Ali was fighting Leon Spinks in New Orleans that evening. And they're yelling and screaming, how can we be the only network that doesn't have the post-fight interview with Ali? And so, I'm hearing all this. I turned around and I raised my hand. I said, I can get you the interview. And they all turned and looked at me. Who are you? I said, I'm the girl that can get you the interview. And I said, you put me on a plane and you have me a crew waiting for me. And I will go down to New Orleans and I will have the show for you in your hands tomorrow morning for the show Saturday afternoon. And I have no idea why they believed me. They put me on a private jet, sent me to New Orleans. And I called Ali, told him I was on my way. He said, I'll have my room key waiting for you at the front desk. Just have your crew ready because I don't have a lot of time. And so he said, meet me in my suite. So we go up, we set up in the suite, and I'm getting very nervous because he's not here yet. I'm going, oh my God, what did I do? What did I do? So I said, I'm definitely getting fired if I don't get this. So next thing I know, the door opens and Muhammad Ali walks in. And he walks straight to the camera, punches into the lens, and he says, I'd only do this for my friend Jayne.
That's fantastic. And he had just won that close bout too.
He did. Just enough, barely enough to win.
So when you went back with that tape, I mean, jaws must have just hit the floor and make all kinds of noise.
Yeah, I don't remember that part, but and I say this is really weird because there are a lot of things that I just took for granted, and so a lot of things that I miss and I don't remember, but I don't remember actually giving them the tape. But I knew I had done my job. And I knew that if all of this happens and they actually comes off great, they won't be asking again, who's that girl?
Mm-hmm.
They will be saying, oh, that's Jayne Kennedy. And so I did my show on Sunday. They cut a piece for me. They aired theirs on Saturday. They cut a piece for me to air in my show on Sunday. I went home Sunday night totally exhausted. I woke up Monday morning. Phone was ringing. I picked up the phone and it said, hello, Jayne Kennedy. I said, yes, your contract has just picked up for the rest of the year.
Well, of course, right? I mean, come on, that's just, that's crazy, and it also speaks to what network television has always been like. It's been nonsensical. It still is today, frankly. But the realities of having to placate Southern affiliates, and I mean, arguably even in that day and age, right in the 1970s, when it's mind-boggling. But I think it's also a testament to, I think your ambition and your work ethic and just dealing with what comes your way to kind of overcome those obstacles and stuff and standing up for yourself to do that, right? It's amazing.
And I was afraid. I said, it's up to me to make this happen. And it's not up to anyone else. I can't wait, because that was my personality going forward since day one, since I first landed in Los Angeles. And the very first sign that I saw on the street was Hope Street. And I said, okay, Hope is going to get me through all of this. And just job after job after job kept coming and coming. I was blessed with those opportunities, because sometimes it wasn't about me. Sometimes it was just a blessing. And the NFL Today was a huge blessing. I met some wonderful people. I made some great friends. And then when they fired me, that just broke my heart.
Jayne, can you give me just a sample of like what a typical week was like for you on the travel and that kind of stuff? Because I find it amazing that you were doing this kind of stuff, and Brent too, for that matter.
Yeah. So we taped in New York. I lived in Los Angeles. So every Friday night, I would leave Los Angeles on the red eye to New York. Brent and I flying together to New York. We get picked up, taken to the hotel. Saturday, I'm doing a lot of research. And remember, again, this is no internet, no sources where you can find information. Libraries were closed. And so, you're on your own. So whatever information I could get was usually from players that I knew. And so I get in on a Saturday. I do all of my prep, wash my hair, shampoo, then study for the rest of the night. Sunday mornings, come in the studio. I did my own hair and makeup. They didn't have a wardrobe provision for me, so I asked them if I got somebody, would they be able to give them end credits? And they said yes. So I went to a black-owned business in New York called a Zagobi Boutique, and I said, "Would you like to be on television?" And they said, "Yeah." So then I took the some of the samples back to CBS, and I said I would like for them to get end credits on the show and be my clothier for the season. And they said yes. That was the only said thing they said yes to.
Once an entrepreneur, I mean, my goodness, it's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, so and then I was always interested in trying to forward and advance other people along with my journey. So I also asked them, they were getting a limousine for me in Los Angeles, to take me to the airport and pick up in New York. So I said, well, this is crazy. I keep calling the, travel department. They called me back, and then, it's back and forth, back and forth. Why don't I just book my pickup service? And they said, okay. So I called a little known, they'd only been in the business for 1 year, um, Jackson Limousine in Los Angeles, black owned company. And I said, would you guys like to have a contract with CBS? And they said, oh, heck yeah. So I was able to get them a 2-year contract with CBS to do all the pickups for me. So, sometimes you have to advocate for yourself, and I truly believe in that.
How did
But
you
I was
deal? Yeah.
back to the
Good.
weekly schedule. So anyway, so Sunday morning I get on the set and I'm doing all the shows. We usually had maybe 12 games to cover. Um, so you've got your early morning starts, then by the time they get to halftime, you're into doing the start times for your central time zones. And then by the time your East Coast games are wrapping up, then you're doing your lead-ins for your West Coast games, and you've got monitors. Now, remember, this was low tech, very low tech. So, you've got people handing you notes. Statisticians are handing you notes under the desk.
All right, back live at our control room in New York. Let's get you up to date with all the scores right now. Jayne, Detroit over Atlanta 10-3. Many in our audience have been watching that game.
Brent, Detroit is playing an absolutely fantastic defensive game, scoring a 15-yard pass, Jeff Comlo to Freddie Scott. Then Atlanta added a 23-yard field goal to Tim Mazzetti.
All right, Irv, in that game, controversial moment. Did David Hill have possession when he broke the plane?
Well, I thought he did, and so did Roman Gabriel. The rule now, when you go into the end zone with a pass or any kind of a run, all you have to do is carry it into the end zone, break the plane to the goal line, it's a touchdown. You don't have to have possession and run with the ball.
All right, but the question, of course, is whether or not he had possession on that.
Yeah, we don't know that answer yet.
All right, Green Bay 14, Minnesota 7.
Minnesota scored on a 4-yard pass, Tommy Kramer to Ahmad Rashad. Then Green Bay came back. 20-yard pass, Whitehurst to James Lofton, and a 1-yard run, Barty Smith.
Now, in the Baltimore-Pittsburgh game, they are tied at the half at 10. Jayne, the story here is the injuries for the Steelers. Listen to these Steelers who did not open the game. Lambert, Harris, Kolb, Furness, and Ron Johnson all out. And now Lynn Swann and Jerry Mullins have fallen. They are silent, yet they're tied at 10.
Well, the Steelers exploded with a 47-yard pass play from Terry Bradshaw to John Stallworth. Baltimore then came right back on a 36-yard pass, Greg Landry to Roger Carr.
The New York Jets 24, Buffalo 12. They are not yet at the half. Again, it's 24-12, Jets over the Bills.
For the Jets, 2 touchdowns for Tommy Newton on rushes of 51 yards and 1 yard. And just before the half, a 37-yard pass, Richard Todd to Wesley Walker.
And what could be a very big upset, Cincinnati is leading Houston 24-10. Bengals over Houston now 24-10.
It's been all Cincinnati behind quarterback Jack Thompson, the throw-in Samoan, which is, I think, your favorite, Brent, and 2 touchdowns for Pete Johnson and 1 for Charles Alexander.
At the half, San Diego now is starting to come back against New England. 2014. New England over San Diego. Again, that game is at the half.
New England scored on runs by Sam Cunningham and Don Calhoun, along with 2 John Smith field goals. San Diego added a touchdown pass, Dan Fouts to John Jefferson, and a 1-yard run, Clarence Williams.
We didn't have digital programmers in our desktop. So, they're handling papers to us with updates under the desk. And my very first show, the tape machine ate up my interview. So I had to wing it my very first show. But I was accustomed to winging things. So I pulled it off.
Now, at the time, Brent Musburger was the sports anchor at the CBS owned and operated station, now known as KCBS. I forget, KNXT maybe, was it?
Yeah.
And obviously you were living in Pasadena at the time too. So, I mean, the two of you must have been just frenetic and exhausted after a weekend like that.
Well, I mean, he also was doing the nightly news. So, that's 5 days a week. He's on the nightly news in Los Angeles at that time. So, if he could do it, I could do it. And then also during the week, I would have to, usually my interviews with the players was in East Coast, east of the Mississippi, let's say. So I would have to fly out, do the interviews with NFL films. And we would sometimes have to fly to different places to get the piece done. And then I would fly back to Los Angeles for Thursday, and then Friday night back out again to New York. So it was very hectic schedule. Absolutely.
Well, it's also interesting too, because as you talk about your departure from the show, right? In some respects, and in a sort of unbelievable way, that kind of schedule seemed to be held against you for some reason, as one of the sort of stated reasons as to why your contract was not being renewed after the Super Bowl in 1980, which seems incredible.
Well, the first time it happened, the first time they fired me, I had gone to Frank Smith, because it's very common. It was very common in the day that you would have a network that would have, specials or movie of the weeks, etc., during the week, and their talent from one show, if they were on hiatus for that show, then they would pick up spots on these other shows that were running during the summer. And that was very common. So, it didn't seem crazy to me to ask, I'm only working the NFL today half a year. So the other half of a year, I'm an actress. I want to be able to talk to the people in the talent department and see if I could get a job as an actress on some of the shows. And so he actually sent me to the gentleman at CBS. And he said, no, he said, we had, I think it was Speak Up America, and with Phyllis George, he said that didn't work. And so we're not going to do that again. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to look for other work, but there wasn't anything else at CBS. So I asked Frank Smith, the president at CBS Sports, if I was able to go out and seek other employment at other networks. And he said, well, let me know what you're thinking. And so I ended up with my friend George Schlatter, who had booked me on Laugh-In years before. He asked me if I would do his new show called Speak Up America. No. Yeah,
that's right. And I think the one you were thinking about earlier about Phyllis George was called Just People. But Schlatter's interesting because people have to remember too that there was this wildly successful show that Schlatter was producing at the time called Real People, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Speak Up America was kind of like a spin-off of that show, right?
It probably could have been.
Or a formulaic expansion, maybe is a better way of putting it.
It had different components that had never been seen in TV before, because we were taking news items on the street. We would send our reporters out, me and the other two hosts on the show. We would go out and we talk to people in the streets, get their opinion. We would come back. Those tapes were edited, and then we had a studio audience, and this was a live show on Friday nights. So the other pieces we were taping anytime that we could, but our Friday night was a live show.
NBC in Burbank, Marjo Borkner.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello there, you all. Thank you and welcome to Speak Up America. Thank you. You know, during the week, we've been talking to a lot of people about a lot of things. And tonight, we're going to hear what many of them had to say. But right now, here's a lady that people just love to look at and listen to, Jayne Kennedy.
Thank you, Marjo. Some say that Dr. Sun Myung Moon is the new Messiah. Others contend that the Moonies are con artists and religious fanatics. You'll hear what some of them had to say tonight. But right now, here's a lady with an awful lot to say, Ron DeBate.
And so we would come in, we would show the piece, and then we get the audience reaction to what they saw. And so here we are, the host, and they're talking, you know, and there are all kinds of opinions that are popping up on these, sometimes heavy, sometimes really stupid questions. You know, so I think that it was just something that I think it was irking a lot of people, especially the news department at CBS, because we were dealing in news stories, and the news department said we're the only ones allowed to do news stories. So here we are again up against the wall in a fight. But anyway, before I did my thing with my job with NBC, I went back with a signed contract in hand to Frank Smith, and I said, these people are willing to let me do this show, but I have to get your permission first. And I said, would you be willing to let me do Speak Up America every Friday night? And I said, and it won't hinder my schedule whatsoever. He said, I think it would be great for our primetime audience. And I said, perfect. And he signed it. He signed it for me. So I went back and I started working at NBC. And then all of a sudden, halfway through the show, I get a notice that I'd been fired. And they first said they fired me because I had worked for another network. And I said, no, you cannot do that because I have a letter from the president at CBS Sports that says that I can. And I showed them the letter, so they hired me back. And then 2 weeks later, they fired me again. This time they fired me because I said, it's too taxing on you. And I said, what, too taxing on me as a woman? And they said, you can't work Friday night and then be in studio Sunday and then go back to Los Angeles and then work Tuesdays and Wednesdays on your interviews. And I said, well, are you saying that Brent can because he's on there 5 nights a week in Los Angeles and he's doing his 2 days in New York, so a man can, but a woman can't? And so they hired me back. So then they realized they were going to have to come up with something that was so generic that I would not have the opportunity to fight. And they fired me. And a lot of people accused me for leaving. Even Brent on air said, you know, when Thomas Hender said we miss our queen, the first thing Brent said was, well, you know, we all go on to work on other networks. We all do, you know. I said, oh my God, no, that's not what I had in mind. I had permission, and they stole that from me. And I really, really enjoyed doing that show.
At what point in this journey, in their inability to properly hire you, as well as their inability to properly, if you will, let you go, at what point do you kind of just look skyward and go, like, why am I going through all this? Like, what is, like, is this even worth it, really? And the whole helicopter incident in the Super Bowl, which we're going to encourage people to get the book, of course, but you know, people remember that you were flying around during that Super Bowl at CBS in 1980. Right. And right. The story of how you were essentially kind of minimized in that broadcast.
Yes,
it's just crazy. And you know, you can't just say that's just television, that's entertainment. I mean, because we know the show business is a ridiculous business rooted in not a lot, but still, right? But still, it just had to be maddening to you, or you know, but clearly I don't know. I think it left I think a lot of viewers were also misled too, because all of a sudden you were there and then you weren't. And I don't think people
Yeah.
really felt like they got the proper reasons as to why.
I don't think they did either. And, you know, there have been many people that have said, you know, it was because of this or that. There's been podcasts that have said, you know, this is actually, you want to know the truth. And they're not the truth, you know. And so that was one of the reasons that I wrote the book, because I said, I want to be able to tell my story in my own words, to so that, you know, this is the truth. This is what happened, not all of those other things that I've been allowing people for more than 30 years to tell my story. And I cannot do that anymore.
All right, so let me go back to where I started in our conversation, and that is, um, have you been surprised at maybe how many people have come out of the woodwork to remember, embrace, uh, uh, you know, uh, remember the good times and stuff from the old NFL today kinds of things? Welcome your return, shall we say, with this book and into the spotlight, because I think if I'm not mistaken, I think there's a wellspring of admiration and love and remembrance of your time there, despite its shortness.
And there,
Yeah.
there is, and a lot of people, a lot of it is because of people that, not only the NFL today, but all the other things that I've done as well. And it is surprising because, you know, like, you know, there is the fear, you know, you're writing the book and you're saying, oh my gosh, you know, I'm telling all this about me, and how's it going to be received? And oh my gosh, what I'm going to do? How do I tell this story? You know, do I tell it at all? Do I delete it? You know, there's all of that going on in my head throughout this entire process. And and it just, God just spoke to me and said, you tell the whole thing. And if you don't tell the whole thing and how you feel, you're sure, you're a disservice to yourself. You're talking about how other people have mistold your story. Don't you do the same thing. You have to tell it in its entirety. And you know, I ended up writing more than 1,000 pages. When Disney signed me, I they said, well, you know, you're gonna have to write 375 pages. And I said, oh, that's no problem. I already have 879. And I'm still writing, and I'm still writing. So I by the end I had over 1,000 pages, and then it was like, oh my God, what do I take out?
Well, no, I'm glad
And
you
that
didn't take. I'm glad you didn't take anything out. I'm not gonna drag you back to the body and soul issue and the story and how the first marriage came to an end and stuff, nor the Playboy article and all that kind of stuff. I'll leave that for people to read in the book and stuff, because that had to be a tumultuous time for you on a personal level. But when you look at the IMDb page, though, it doesn't seem like you missed a beat thereafter. I mean, you kind of dusted yourself off fairly quickly, it seems, that to sort of re-engage in your television, your acting career, and obviously your second marriage now still ongoing, and a wonderful family that came out of all that stuff.
you're talking
Before,
about after the
go ahead.
after the CBS?
Yeah.
Are you talking? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's when I put on, you know, my blinders and I said, full steam ahead. I mean, it took a while. It wasn't like immediately, because it took a while. I had to pull myself together. I had to pull myself up from the bootstrap. I had to kind of like dust myself off, and I had to get rid of all the demons, I'll call them, that were sitting on my shoulders, lying on my back, telling me, you know, be sad, be angry, don't do anything, just fade away. And I said, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. And I started drama classes, and I started exploring, you know, how I can get myself back. And this was all my introspective self, you know. It was never about this part of it was not about Hollywood anymore. This was about, how do I survive? And I got, I got it. I developed the Love Your Body program, which became in the top 3 in the country with Jane Fonda and Richard Simmons. And I never believed that would happen. Um, And then there were other things that happened. I kept working and it kept growing, and it was getting bigger and bigger than it had been in the 70s. I mean, you can't still get bigger than the NFL today, but I was on the longest running syndicated sports host of it years, Greatest Sports Legends.
Yes, I think that's an underrated body of work that you did. I remember watching those and devouring them because it was kind of like an anthology, and you were interviewing everybody in sports. It was probably the go-to show for that kind of format in those days.
Yeah, because it wasn't just football anymore. I was covering all the sports, and it wasn't 3 minutes anymore. I was there I'm doing the whole hour, the 30-minute segments, and, meeting all these wonderful people. We shoot at La Costa in Southern California.
The La Costa Hotel and Spa in Carlsbad, California, is the home of greatest sports legends. Every year, 10 of the world's finest athletes come here to be honored as sports legends. In all, 130 superstars have appeared. Today, Legends host Jayne Kennedy meets with a baseball pitcher who was once the ace of the San Francisco Giants. He became a hero in his native land, the Dominican Republic. His name, Juan Marichal.
We would invite the talent in. They would come, they would spend the day at the spa, whether they were golfing or whatever. And then the interview was the entire next day. So whether we would pick and choose, we're doing lunch and then this and this, but it was very, very laid back, very casual environment. And so you end up with these people that are telling you their secrets and their answers in a very relaxed environment, which is amazing. They used to love to come do the show. We could not get Bill Russell on the show. And they had been asking Bill Russell for years and years, and he kept turning it down. When I came on the show, they said, well, let's try again. And Bill Russell said yes.
It's that charm. It's that Jayne Kennedy charm. I mean, you just have that magnetism that I give you tremendous kudos, because I think if I remember some of those interviews correctly, I mean, there was just an ease of conversational, there's a comfort level, it seemed. And I think maybe that's what also Brent maybe saw too in your interview with NFL Today, is that you could kind of relate to the players a lot better than any of those stiffs in the studio could.
Yeah, and it was a very warm environment, and people were very welcoming, and I was welcoming with them, and they could talk to me, which is what the suggestion was when I first went to audition. They said, you have to let them know that you're your friend, that you're their friend. You have to let them know that this is not a job for you, but that you're very concerned and that this is something that's dear to your heart. And that's exactly what it was for me with sports. So when Bill Russell got to the set that day, I had to ask him why. I said, why you turned this down so many times and you agreed to do it for me? And he said, Jayne, you're building a legacy and I want to be part of that legacy. He said, so I am here for you, whatever you need me to do.
That's beautiful.
Julius Erving did the same thing. Julius Erving did the same thing. He would never let people into his home to interview him. And Sports Spectacular wanted to be in his home, and they called on me again. Jayne, he said that if you did the interview, they would allow us into this living room. I did the interview. I got the story. But it was a respect for who I was, what I represented as an African-American woman. I was told that Walter Payton had issued an edict throughout the NFL. We're going to take care of Jayne. Jayne is our Jayne. We're going to take care of Jayne. And that's exactly what the NFL did.
It's totally amazing, and I want to remind our listeners that this book is much more than just the area that we just kind of double clicked on, which is obviously the NFL Today and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, your life post all of that. I mean, you did get married again. Your actual name is Jayne Overton.
Yes,
you've got a family of 4, and you've got girls that are all grown up now and stuff. And then your fourth section is sort of this kind of, the title of the book, Plain Jane, is sort of your I think you're sort of your fourth section of life, frankly. Um, it's a really interesting and amazing arc of a life and a story. And like I said before, I think there are a lot of sports fans out there that kind of just know you from those 2 or 3 years and don't know the fuller picture. And I got to tell you, everything from Leon's blaxploitation career and your Jet magazine string. I mean, I think you maybe single-handedly kept Johnson Publications in business for the 80s and the 90s. Uh, and
I found out that someone told me that I had more jet covers than anyone else. I had 17 or 20.
I think
They
that's
didn't
right.
remember. Really?
I think that's right. I think that's right. I think I am doing some research. You did an interview with Chicago's own Pat Harvey the last year, I think, and I think you had mentioned at the time that there was a Jet Beauties of the Week book that was coming out at the time. And I'm sure that's out now.
Yes. Yes,
And
it
let me
is.
guess,
It's
you're probably on the cover, I'm guessing.
No, I'm not. It's called
Oh,
Black is Beautiful. It's
okay.
all the photographers. Lamont McLemore, he was a founding member of the Fifth Dimension, and he was asked to do a portfolio about all of his work of shooting the Jet Beauty of the Weeks. And he didn't do all of them, but he did a great many of them, more than any other photographer. And so this collection is called Black is Beautiful, and it's all of these unseen photos that did not appear in the Jet Beauty of the Week.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah. And I also have a book that I've done with Lamont as well. It's not out yet. It's still in the works, but we're creating a coffee table book with I've done over 5,000 photos with him over the years. And he's my favorite photographer. Is my favorite person, I should say. And so we've been trolling through and picking what we think, are these the best? Are these the best? We're having a hard time.
Well, that's great because
So
I mean,
anyway.
the Jet and Ebony, they're all, it was a gigantic, a powerful and influential company, Chicago-based,
Oh
of
yeah.
course, for many, many
Oh
years.
yeah.
It's just sad
Oh
to sort of
yes.
see it kind of, like a lot of traditional publishing entities kind of just go by the wayside. And it's
Yes.
it's beautiful that you're harkening back to it because it was so essential to so many people's lives in many different ways, especially yours.
It was the newspaper for African Americans, because like that's where we got the entertainment industry, sports industry, political, everything, every aspect of our communities. And Jet was a weekly, Ebony was a monthly, but we were every week we could tell you who was going to be on television that week. What Black artist was going to be on television that week, because we had no other opportunities. There were nobody else doing those stories. And so we had to tell them ourselves. And they survived. And John Johnson, the head of Johnson Publishing, he always referred to me as our Jayne. He said, we're not going to let anybody bother our Jayne. We're going to take care of her. And that he did. That he did. And Isaac Sutton, he was a photographer that I worked with for many, many years, worked for Jet all the time. And he would call my father and tell me, Jayne's fine. I just saw her last night, and don't worry about Jayne. She's doing okay. Like they were always taking care of me. I don't want to say I don't know why, but I mean there were lots of other people that they could have done that for, but for some reason I was blessed.
Well, I've been
And
blessed to have this conversation with you. One last question before I let you go, and then I'll let you promote. We're going to promote the heck out of the book, of course, and all that stuff.
thank
It's the least we can do. As you reflect back, at what point did you recognize how your presence on a show like the NFL Today was to a certain generation of women, Black women, Black women who have career goals, and your role model type presence, so to speak? Did you ever feel any of that while you were on set or in that moment? Did it take a while to sort of sink in? Were people projecting on you that maybe you didn't necessarily want that, or did you feel very emboldened by that feeling?
It took a long time because, like, again, I say we didn't have social media or anything like that, so you didn't know. Um, I was just working. I didn't know the impact that I was having on this country. I was on the airplanes or in the studio, West Coast studio, East Coast, and I was just working. So I didn't even go to parties. So I didn't really know the depth of the impact that I was making until many years later. And then it's a blessing, because I hear when I was writing the book and I started talking about some of the people that have told me what an impact I made, like uh, um, a father telling his daughter, I'm going to sit you down in front of the TV so that you can see this woman, because this is a Black woman doing what no other Black woman has been able to do. So just remember, if she could do it, you can do it too. Oprah Winfrey told me that she and Gayle King used to sit in front of the TV and watch me on the CBS NFL Today, and she said they would jump up and down whenever I came on, screaming, "Colored people on TV! Colored people on TV!" And she said it. They said it made them aspire to do the jobs that they were trying to do, and she said it made them believe that it was real, that it was attainable. And so many times I hear people telling those stories, and it's sort of like it overwhelms my heart, but it's sort of like, oh my god, I feel shy.
It's also kind of,
But
it's also a big burden too, right? If you think about it.
it is, but that's easy to carry for me because I care. I see so many people that at the grocery store, I was walking down the grocery aisle, and one lady, she said, "Have you seen that?" It was a 2000 cover of Ebony magazine. "Have you seen Ebony?" And I said, "No." She said, "You got to go see it. It's right at the front counter." She said, "You got to go see it. Got to go see it right now." She said, "Go pay for your stuff and get it right now." So I go pay for my stuff and I get the magazine. We go in the car and I'm flipping through it, and they've got me in there as one of the most beautiful women of the 20th century. And then, like, I'm hearing Most Def on the radio with my daughters driving down the street, busy Wilshire Boulevard, and all of a sudden, he gets to the part where he said, "Yo, he's talking about this girl that he met, right? Yo, she was so ill. Word to my mother, man. She looked just like Jayne Kennedy. Word to my mother, man." And my daughters, I slammed on the brakes. My daughters look at me. "Did he just say your name, Mom? Why is Bell Steph saying your name on a rap song, Mom?" And then my oldest daughter said, "Mom, you got street cred."
That's what it
Or
took,
when
huh?
I,
That's what it took after all those years of bringing them up and all that,
those years.
that moment.
Yeah, yeah, those
That's
moments that
hilarious.
just pop up nowhere. And then it always makes me think of there was a small Black man who did shoe shines at the doors of the NBC studios back in the day. And NBC was sort of my home back then. Almost every show I did was NBC. So I would come in and I would nod to him, say hi, and he'd be shining his shoes. And here you have this guy who's meeting every single person of major status that's coming through these doors. And I started noticing they're all taking the time to talk to him. They're all taking the time to talk to him. And some of them, long after they've gotten their shoe shine, they're still sitting talking to this little man. And so one day I walked up to him and he says, "Can I take you to lunch?" And I says, "Yeah, sure." He said, "I want to talk to you about something." He said, "You have a legacy to protect." He said, "You're going to be the one." Now, remind you, this was before 1975. He said, "You have a legacy that you're building and you have to protect that." He said, "And I'm going to make sure that I do all my best to help you do that." And, I keep thinking of him and I keep thinking of those words that he said, because here's a shoe shine guy. He talked to major stars coming in through those doors every day. He didn't have to take the time to talk to me, but he did.
Supreme thanks to Jayne for a wonderful and delightful conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I did in pursuing and putting it together. You can find out all about what's going on in the world of Jayne Kennedy at her website. That's Jayne Kennedy. Jayne is spelled Jayne, JayneKennedy.com. And I'm talking past career stuff. There's so much of a treasure trove of stuff there. Present, so many things she's got her hands in these days. And future, she's got stuff like 2 perfume lines coming out. All kinds of stuff going on, past, present, and future, at JayneKennedy.com. You can also find her on the road. I'm sure she's got a couple of other stops, but we knew of this one. At Underground Books in Sacramento on October 23rd. Jayne will be live and there and available to meet, greet, and sign a couple of copies of this book. And if you are lucky enough to have purchased it, or maybe win a copy, as I promised earlier, maybe get it signed and send a picture of us with you and her together and tell us that you met because of this here little show. That'd be kind of fun, wouldn't it? Sure. Like I said, I promised another trivia question this week, and courtesy of Andscape Publishing, who's the publishers of Jayne's new book, we will be happy to give you, let's see, we'll make two copies this week available to win if you can answer this 2-part trivia question. Part 1 is this. Phyllis George, we know, left in 1978, or prior to the 1978 season on NFL Today, for her own primetime show on CBS. What was the name of that show? What was the name of the show that Phyllis George left the NFL Today for in 1978? It was her primetime show on CBS. What was it called? Part 2 of the question is this. We know that Jayne Kennedy had her own primetime show, part of an ensemble on NBC in 1980, which, as we know, is called Speak Up America. You heard a clip from it earlier. What was the name of the show that was spun off from? Speak Up America was spun off from another show. What was that show, the spinoff, it was spun off from, called? I need the answer to both of those. And again, it's hello@goodseatsstillavailable.com. That's where you can send your 2-part answer to this trivia question. And the first 2 correct answers to it, and we know when they come in because we time-stamped them, so the first ones that are correctly submitted will win a copy of this book, Plain Jane, a memoir. You will enjoy it, whether you win it, buy it, or steal it from your local library. No, we don't encourage that, but you can borrow it from them. You'll enjoy it for sure, and so much more that we never get to in this conversation that's part of it. And even if it's just the NFL Today that you're interested in, you will be more than pleased for all the juicy stuff that's in the book related to that. Let's see. Our website is goodseatsstillavailable.com. Lots of good stuff there. We post all of our episodes there. Some merch there for you. If you'd like to buy us a proverbial cup of coffee because you like what you heard, please do so. There's a little button there to do that. And you can follow us on the various socials, of course. On X, you'll find us at Good Seats Still. On the Blue Sky thing, you'll find us at goodseatsstillavailable.com. And just about everywhere else, you will find us at Good Seats Still Available, all one word, including, by the way, YouTube, where we stream and post all of these episodes as well. So if you don't like to do the podcasting thing, you can't figure that out, that's a convenient way to listen to and enjoy each week's shows. But wherever you listen, please indeed tell your friends, and if there's a chance to rate or review or thumbs up stuff, please by all means do so. That helps other people like you find the show. Our thanks, of course, to the great Jerry Payne for his weekly audio excellence, once again coming through with shining colors this week. And special thanks for this week's episode to Gregory Amerson and Beth Mello, who were respectively helpful in helping get Jayne and me together for this conversation. So thank you both for that as well. Thank you for listening. More fun and excitement coming your way next week. Take care of yourselves and others while you're at it. And we'll see you next week. Thank you.